I'm Anupama Madhu from Fidelity Investments. Shyam and I belong to the group called FCAT, Fidelity Center for Applied Technologies. FCAT is like the R&D for Fidelity. So we work on emerging technologies, have multiple incubators, and have the right to experiment a lot and fail fast. So assistive technologies and the accessibility as a domain is of interest to us. We were in the past few months, we have spent significant time understanding a little bit more about accessibility. What does accessibility mean from our customers' perspective? What does it mean from our associates' perspective? Fidelity is about 30,000 strong worldwide. And have about 20 million customers in the US, both in the retail space as well as in the institutional space. So when our customers, clients, and our associates have physical disabilities or cognitive disabilities, how do we provide all the support to help them use our products and services, and also at a workplace have the experience which they should, right? With that in mind, there were a lot of work done in terms of understanding this space. Today's AssiT-athon is something which we thought we should launch and seek ideas from our vibrant ecosystem, what we have in India, in the startups as well as in the academia space. As you see, we want to focus on cognitive disabilities. So the question may be, why are we not focusing on physical disabilities, right? So it's a large enterprise. So at this point, there are a lot of work which are happening in the physical disabilities, people with visual challenges, people hard on hearing, and other forms of disabilities. There is a lot of investment and work happening. And this is for the future. And we also realize maybe how much is assistive technology helping for people with cognitive disabilities. We were just scratching the surface there. So we thought an ideathon would be a good idea. And that's where we are here today with AssisT-athon in partnership with NASSCOM. We are delighted in this partnership year after year. We do some sort of one of these challenges and events with NASSCOM, and it's always been a great success and a pleasure to work with. In this webinar, I am going to hand this over to Shyam, who will walk you through at a high level on cognitive disabilities, talk a bit about the use cases, and a little bit on the process in terms of the dates, key dates for you to remember, and take as many questions as you might have. So we encourage you to post your questions, and also towards the end you should be able to ask us. And if you're missing out on a few, we are always available on email. With that, I'll hand it over to Shyam.
Thank you, Anupama. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Anupama mentioned, we're part of the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology and part of the research team here. So over the next 25 odd minutes, what we want to do is speak to you about a few things. So as you just heard the opening remarks from Anupama, our focus is on people with cognitive disabilities, customers, and employees. So what we want to do in the next 10 minutes is kind of give you some insights on what we've heard in our conversations with customers, what we've heard in conversations with employees and people in the ecosystem about the needs of people with cognitive disabilities. And the intent here is just to give you a very high-level overview, just to kind of get the empathy started. But as you can imagine, the space is very, very complex. The conditions vary from person to person. So what we do share here is just the clinical research or what we know as of today. But the research in this space is evolving every day. So and that's part of the challenge that we're trying to tackle here, right? So with that, we always so at Fidelity we believe in the power of stories and inspiring stories at that. So we wanted to share with you the stories of a couple of people. Need no introductions, right? So Steven Spielberg has had a condition called dyslexia, which, as you can see, leads to difficulty in reading as well as comprehension. And it went undiagnosed till he hit the age of 60. So you can imagine all the work, including movies like Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones. He did all that while coping up with this condition, right? And as you can see from the quote that he shared with people who may have the same condition, the idea is that you cannot get rid of these conditions. They are not curable, but you can always work around it, right? And again, a legendary filmmaker like him, having coped up with it, is a source of great inspiration. Another source of inspiration for us has been Michael Phelps. Again, needs no introduction. Michael was diagnosed with a condition called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's also called ADD in some countries. Essentially, it involves what happens for people with this condition is that they are unable to retain focus. They tend to be restless, and Michael had similar symptoms. So he had this inability to sit still, as you can see here. But what Michael decided was, instead of going on medication for years together and for his reflexes to slow down, he chose to stop using the drug and instead use swimming to help him retain focus. And we know what happened after that, right? So 22 medals, the most decorated Olympian in living times. So the key message that we're trying to share here is that disability is not to be seen as a weakness. Obviously, people with these conditions have other gifts. It's just about helping them operate the way a normal person would and give them the same opportunities. And what we're trying to do through AssiT-athon is to use technology to enable that. So in terms of the spectrum of cognitive disabilities as we know of it today, we've tried to plot it on two separate axes. So I'll talk about the x-axis, or the horizontal one first. So some of these conditions tend to be genetic in nature, which means that they're not curable, very little that you can do about it. And some of these, which is the other end of the spectrum, tend to be age related. So as you progress and get older, the likelihood of you contracting or developing some of these conditions becomes higher and higher. On the same, in a similar reference, we have temporary as well as permanent disabilities, which is the y-axis here. Temporary disabilities are triggered by certain incidents or causes, and to some extent they can be cured, whereas permanent, like we discussed with genetic, tend to be conditions that have to be managed. They are not curable, right? So again, a lot of medical terms here, and don't be worried, we're not going to go through each and every one of these conditions. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard or met people who may have one or more of these conditions. But these 6 conditions are the ones that are the most difficult to deal with because they're genetic in nature and permanent. They usually are, the symptoms start appearing very early in the childhood days, but oftentimes they go undiagnosed, and it's only later in life that people get to know that they have this condition and they begin to learn to cope with it. So the later in life you realize or you get diagnosed with it, the more difficult it might become for you to learn the coping mechanisms. And hence, that is where we have an opportunity with technology to enable people who go undiagnosed to really cope up with it and make up for the lost years. So that's the first kind of cognitive disabilities. The second kind is those that are permanent and irreversible, but tend to become more prevalent as people progress in age. And there is no definite guidance on what this age is, but multiple studies have suggested that the incidence of age-related cognitive disabilities spike up after the age of 65. And all these disabilities that you see here, the three, are kind of broadly classified as dementia, but there's an important distinction to be made here. Dementia is a state, it's not a condition, it's not a medical condition. So everything that gets clubbed under dementia may not be the same. As you can see, there are three variations of dementia here. And while dementia is related to memory or lack of memory, it does have a lot of secondary effects in terms of functional challenges that people with these conditions face. So it's important to distinguish and work on these individual conditions as opposed to dementia as an overall bucket. But as we discussed, these are again disabilities that will not go away, cannot be cured. So it is important for us to kind of think about how they will lead the rest of their life as well as remain productive. And remember, these are people who till the age of 65 or till the age of 70 have led a perfectly normal life, have functioned their way, have made choices the way they wanted. So it's very difficult for them at that stage in life to really pick up new skills to cope up with these conditions. The last category that we want to discuss today is conditions that are temporary in nature or can remain temporary in nature and can be cured. These are usually triggered by certain other ailments like heart strokes or a death in the family or an accident which could lead to a traumatic brain injury or anxiety, right? Death of a loved one who was actually managing all the finances for you. The spouse could develop a condition called financial anxiety. So these again tend to become a little bit more prevalent with age, but these can happen to anyone at any point in time. So, but with therapy, some of these, especially PTSD, is something that can be reversed and people can lead an offline. So, with that, we would like to dive into one condition, Alzheimer's, which, just so you know, constitutes almost 70% of the population that deals with dementia. We're having a lot of background static, so we'll request people to stay muted if they're not speaking. All right, so let's continue with this section on the functional needs for a person. Hi there again. Can we request Shubham, can I request you to mute others? We're having some background static. Yeah, seems to have gone. Sorry for that interruption. So, so we were talking about Alzheimer's, how prevalent it is, especially among people in the elderly age group. So let's think about Mark, right? So Mark is male. He's a gentleman in his early 60s, and he's been recently diagnosed, which, by the way, may not happen in all cases. People go and diagnose for decades before they realize they have a condition. Now, because he knows that he's in an early stage of Alzheimer's, Mark has shifted to buying grocery and other things that he needs online because his grandchildren have told him that, you know, that's always easier. You don't have to step out of home. And even if he were to go to the supermarket, if things change, I mean, where they kept changes, he gets confused. And when he eventually finds the aisle where he needs to pick up something, there's a very good likelihood that he may forget what he came to buy, right? So given all these constraints and considerations, Mark has decided to switch to online shopping. So let's see what the experience of Mark would be, right, while he's trying to buy something online. So the first and something that we may not consciously design for, but the first thing that he needs to do is to switch the computer on and start the browser. And that, my friends, can be very difficult because the power buttons in our laptops are not always very prominent. They tend to be very small, and they present with a bunch of other buttons. So for somebody who's forgotten what the power button looks like, it may become very difficult to find it. And then once they eventually turn on the computer, it may be difficult for them to find the browser that they need to open, where the browser that they've used in the past to access the supermarket, e-commerce shop online. Because if they are not able to find the same browser, if they end up in another browser, step 2 becomes difficult, because it will be very difficult for them to type in the whole URL. So a Mark would rely heavily on auto-population of website names from the history, browser history, to kind of get to the shopping website. And once he does that, he has to select things to buy. Now, while this might be easier than moving around in a physical supermarket, still finding products from the catalog and selecting the quantity that he needs could still pose some difficulty, because he may not remember what quantities he needs things in. And then once he's done this, if this particular shopping website requires you to log in every instance, he may very well have difficulties in remembering the username and password, right? And once he does log in, assuming that he's written it down somewhere, he still has to enter the payment details, right? So the payment authorization and credentials are something that we always recommend everyone to never write down anywhere, right? So there has to be a way for Mark to write it down, but still be able to recover or remember it on a need basis. And this, my friends, is when the order is complete. And we're talking about a very, very simple transaction here, something that Mark might have to do several times a week, right? And there are many more things that he has to do and accomplish. So herein comes the biggest design constraint, right? We are kind of trying to discover solutions that are even able to function when Mark may not even remember that he bought the solution, right? Or that he's using it. So it should be able to work in the background. It should be able to work, subconsciously and become like a shadow for Mark. So that's the kind of design constraint that we're looking at here. So with that, we kind of are in a good, provides a good segue for us to start discussing the use cases. We'll go through this fairly quickly so that we leave enough time for Q&A, and feel free to kind of post your questions, start posting your questions as we discuss each of these. So as posted on the NASSCOM website, we have 3 use cases that we're looking at, and these are not the only 3. These are the 3 that we are actively seeking solutions for, but there are many more things that we want to solve here. But the common thread that you will see across all these 3 use cases are these are almost daily financial activities that a person may have to accomplish, right? With that, let's go into guided form filling, which is the first use case. So the challenge here with form filling is that not just Fidelity, any financial services firm, when we ask customers to fill a form, a typical form may always range in the, have at least 3 to 10 pages that they need to fill, right? So how do you retain the focus, attention, and capacity of a person who has cognitive disability and help them accomplish this task? And this task might be something that they have to do very often, right? So there are screen readers available in the market that can help people, like Anupama mentioned, people who are blind or low vision, allow them to fill these forms by reading out the form and helping them respond to it. but that just solves one part of the problem. It does not really solve the problem of understanding what the response should be, right? So that's essentially what we're trying to solve for in guided form filling. Now the curb cut, right? The curb cut essentially is a concept wherein if you try to solve a problem for a certain user, you might end up solving the problem for a completely unintended section of users too, right? So the most common example that is given is the curb cut itself, right? So the slope that you see in the curbs, while that may have been designed for people who are moving around on wheelchairs, but it does help women who are pregnant. It does help cyclists, right? In Bangalore, it definitely helps people who ride two-wheelers, right? Because they find an easy ride. So in this case, guided form filling, right? If we solve it for people with cognitive conditions, it may also apply for people who are filling the form for the first time, who kind of get lost trying to, accomplish this task. Now, some key design considerations that we want to recommend, but definitely not mandate, is that the solutions that we're seeking for here should kind of be spontaneous. It should be able to help the user while they're doing the activity of filling the form, not after they've sent it out to the financial services provider. And the intent is that there are current day solutions which are able to which including us, there are several providers that have these solutions that are able to detect errors without human intervention, right? But by then a lot of water has already passed under the bridge, right? And you're really going to force the customer or the user to fill up the form again by writing back to them. So this is something where we want a solution to work while they're doing the activity, not after it. Distractions, right? We've spoken enough about distractions in some of the previous frames, but think about it this way: they can be distracted, or it might be very difficult for them to retain their attention. So anything that you can do, or anything the solution does to help retain the attention is purely welcome. And last but not the least, if anybody, right, not just a person with cognitive disabilities, anybody is trying to fill a form that is 8 to 9 pages, runs into 8 to 9 pages, it should provide them with a sense of accomplishment, right, at various points, so that it keeps them interested. So that's some key design considerations that we're thinking of here. And just to make sure that we set the context clear, we're looking at solutions that work when people are trying to fill forms digitally, right? When they're trying to do it in an editable PDF format, not when they've printed it out on paper, because that, I mean, we really want to solve for that too, but we want to solve for the easier one now, which is the editable PDF, and then get to the try cracking solution for the more difficult one, which is printed forms. Anything you want to add here?
Yeah.
Great. Let's keep motoring on. Account statements, right? Again, something that we tend to receive if we have an account, a bank account or a wealth management account, something that we send our customers every single month. Now, what happens is people with attention deficit disorders or dyscalculia, which is essentially an inability to absorb math, it becomes very difficult for them to engage with the colorful charts and the nice looking tables that you have in the statements, right? And then it defeats the very purpose of having these visualizations in the statement, because they're not able to comprehend. So how do we help people with not just these conditions, people with other conditions like dementia and autism, help them interpret account statements so that they can make decisions on what they need to do next? Now, some design considerations that we would like to recommend here is that these solutions should be available on demand. It should not be mandated on all users, because there might be a set of users who don't really need this, who figured their own ways out. So it's something that should be available on demand, as and when the individual requires it. And the second, and what we think is an even more important consideration is that it should work anywhere, anytime, with or without internet access. And that's that's a very aspirational thing or consideration that we have in mind. Now the curb cut here is that while this might be for people who have permanent conditions like ADHD or dyscalculia, this can also help people with temporary conditions like anxiety also make decisions by helping them interpret the account statements, especially when they're going through tough times, right? I'm sure all of you have heard that there are, a lot of bad financial decisions get made when people are under duress or when they are under stress, right? So if you're able to help them avoid that by using technology, that's something that we aim to accomplish here. The last use case is something that is kind of more prevalent for the elderly, because a lot of the elderly, especially in the US market where we operate, tend to use paid caregivers, right? Because their family may not be living nearby, or it may not be feasible for them to attend to the elderly every day. Now, the job of a caregiver comes with very, very difficult working circumstances, because you see a lot. You have to be available 24/7. So it is a job that typically is done by younger people, but is not in high demand right now. And if the Bureau of Labor Statistics is to be believed, this finding people to be paid caregivers is going to get very, very difficult in the future years. So one of the potential solutions that's on the horizon is to use social robots to kind of supplement the shortage of caregivers. And what we want to do is help these social robots also enable their customers or the elderly that they're going to serve with financial decisions, or at least to begin with queries, right? Now, the question that we kind of preempted is, why can't Alexa do that? Why do you have to invest in a robot? Now, what this question has been asked for several years. So as you can see, there have been 33 studies that have been done so far, 33 documented studies on comparing the effectiveness of social robots with virtual agents like Alexa. And a meta-analysis of these studies has revealed that because of their physical presence and manifestation, the ability of people to trust social robots is much higher than an Alexa, right? Now, let's be clear that both of these devices are listening to you. They are seeing what you're doing, right? That's how they comprehend the situation and react to it. But the trust factor with a physical robot has been found to be higher in the studies that have been done so far. Now, the design considerations here are very simple. It's meant to augment, not replace. So essentially, it should not take over the financial activity from the person it's trying to serve. It should only assist them. It should be cost effective, because social robots, the ones that exist in the market today, cost upwards of $1,000 or $10,000 in some cases, which leads to the third part, which is that if you're trying to shell out this kind of money, you would want your robot to do more than one thing for you, right? So it has to be multi-purpose, not one-dimensional. So while we are thinking of robots which would help with financial services, it should be able to help the end user with more than that, right? And open architecture, because that's what allows the developer ecosystem to build new utilities into the hardware. So with that, we're at a point where we are just one step away from opening it up for questions. So all that we discussed so far is kind of in preparation for the milestones that you see here. So right now, as you can see, for AssiT-athon, the idea submission window is open. It will remain open till 7th of November. After that, we do the tough job of trying to cherry pick the top ones, and we hope to do that and communicate it back to the shortlisted teams by 14th of November. After that will be a video pitch for the shortlisted entries, which is planned between 18th to 22nd of November. From these video pitches, we will get down to the top 12, and the shortlisted ones will be informed by 25th of November. And from there on, we hope to provide at least 2 weeks worth of mentoring for the top 12 shortlisted entries, which will involve interactions or the ability to interact with some subject matter experts at Fidelity. And the finale event is planned in Bangalore in the week of 9th to 13th December. Now, all these details are available on the AssiT-athon page, which the URL for which you can see at the bottom of the page.
Just one quick clarification.
Sure.
The finale, it's one of the days of the week of 9th. Date is not finalized yet, so it's not week long. It's just one of the days in the week of 9th.
All right. With that, my friends, we are open to take questions. We may not have left ourselves with 30 minutes, but we do have 20. So happy to take questions.
Thanks, Shyam, for the wonderful explanation. So I have received a few questions. So I'll be reading them out one by one. So the first question is from one of the students. He's asking, is it mandatory to build a text solution to participate in this challenge?
Yeah, to ideas to begin with, right? Very well articulated ideas, but we would certainly encourage to see some sort of a prototype, just a simple demonstration of what is that idea about and how do we see that working. If it's not a fully, even if it's not a fully working prototype, at least some sort of a demonstration in terms of what would that idea entail if we have to put that into for something to see, right? So that is really encouraged.
And if I may add a different interpretation for that question, Shivam, is, are we looking at tech solutions alone, or are we looking at other forms of solutions? The idea here is to solve using assistive technology or enable people with assistive technology. So technology is at the core of what we're looking at here. Right. Back to you, Shivam.
Thanks, Anupama and Shyam. The second question I have is from one of the startups from our Bangalore warehouse. So they're asking, who will own the IP of the solution?
This is just an AssiT-athon which Fidelity is hosting. The IP is completely owned by the ideator. In this case, it's the startup.
Thanks, Anupama. Next question is again from one of the students. So they're asking what all should be a part of the application presentation. Can you give some pointers on that, like what all should be there?
Sure. So your application should first specify which use case you're trying to solve for. We are encouraging people to solve for more than one use case, but the only thing we are requesting is that please do submit separate entries for individual use cases. Now, what should be part of the application is, within that use case, are you trying to solve a micro problem, right? What is your approach? How do you think that approach will help the end user? And like Anupama mentioned as an answer for some of the previous questions, if you do have some vision about what tech stack and how will you really go about building that solution and making it a reality, we would want to see that. So architecture diagrams or demo videos, the choice is entirely left to you. in terms of how do you want to approach it. But what should be really apparent when we look at the submission is the flow of your thoughts in terms of how you will get from the problem to the solution, and then how can the solution, I mean, what's the go-to market? And that part is entirely optional, the go-to market part, but it will be highly appreciated if you do take the effort to kind of document that. Anything you want to add?
The application form itself is asking a short description, and there is a placeholder to put some attachments in. So even if, I'm sure you'd be passionate about the idea, so just send us a 2-minute video talking about the idea and why you have ideated that way, along with some of the other collateral which Shyam talked about.
Thanks, Shyam and Anupama. So the next question that I'm gonna take up is from our Noida warehouse. So this startup is asking, apart from prize money, will we get any sort of project or pilot with Fidelity?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So for the AssiT-athon, we would like to conclude with the prize money. And as you saw, there are multiple levels. We would like to shortlist, go after the really great ideas and finish it with the prize money, right? But having said that, next year, we are actively pursuing on some of these use cases internally as well. So we are looking at partnerships, and if the idea is good, if already working a prototype or some sort of product offering is already available, we would like to certainly engage and start maybe with a smaller POC and go from there. So partnerships are something which we are keen, and 2020 is certainly about a couple of partnerships in this space.
Thanks, Anupama. So the next question that I have is again from Bangalore warehouse. So the startup is asking, we have a startup we have started few months ago, and we do not have a tech solution yet. Can we also take part based on an idea?
Yes, I would think yes. It certainly is in the power of the idea and how the team comes across when they're articulating it. Just be as creative as you can when you put across even the idea. If there is no solution in place, but what are all the ways in which you can demonstrate that? So yes, please go ahead. We'll go from there. Good luck.
Thanks, Anupama, for the clarification. The next question that I have is from one of the student teams. So they're asking, apart from prize money, are there any internship opportunities for the winners?
I am not going to promise that because I lead the ecosystem engagement and not really the college relationships with respect to placements. Yeah, depending on the school which the students are from, we already have internship opportunities, and we regularly work with certain engineering and B schools. So I'll refer, but this is not internship is not something which is intended as an outcome of this exercise.
An alternative take in terms of the answer is that we can promise you that you will get visibility from the senior leadership at Fidelity. So if your college is part of the intake program that we have, then this will definitely hold you in good stead in terms of getting exposure to our leadership.
Thanks, Shyam. Thanks. The next question I have is again from our Bangalore warehouse. So the startup is asking, after the finale, when will be the results be declared? Do you have a deadline for that? How is it gonna be?
Uh, so like Anupama mentioned, the finale date is between the 9th and 13th of December. The jury will be present during the finale, and the winners will be announced and felicitated at the end of the the finale after we're done with all the pitches. So it will be informed on the spot.
So it could be a 1 day long event. So we start with the final, the shortlisted top 12 pitches, followed by the finale, which is the celebration. Or we will finish the pitches, the finale final pitches on the day before and have the celebration the next day. So it's either a single day or it's going to just span across 2 days. The reason being, we have some of our US business partners who are very keen on being part of the jury and also participating and hearing some of these ideas out. To accommodate that timeline, we might have to do it late in the evening on the first day, and again, not late, about 4 in the evening, start at 4 in the evening on day 1, and also again start at 4 in the evening on day 2 for the celebration. If we have to consider that, we would just keep it on 2 days, like a few hours on 2 days. If we are able to plan it really well, then we will finish it in 1 day.
Thanks, Anupama, for the explanation. I guess this also answers one of the questions that I have. One of the startup has also posted what will be the format of finale. I guess this question has also been answered by this explanation. So I'll move on to the next query that is from our Bangalore warehouse. So the startup wants to know who will be the jury members for finale. Whether they would be from Fidelity itself, or you will be bringing in people from some NGOs as well who are working there. Who would be the part of jury members if you have finalized jury members yet?
We haven't finalized the jury list members and the listing yet, but it's going to be a combination of external SMEs, could be from NGOs, could be from other startups, or people who have been in this area for a very long time. We also have people, Fidelity, of course, Fidelity leaders, and some of the other, and as I said, some of our SMEs who are based out of US. So a combination of internal, external is what we're looking at, and a couple of professors as well, depending on their bandwidth, time, and confirmation, we'll go from there.
Thanks, Anupama. So I have one last question here with me. For others, if they have any query, please feel free to post questions. We will take questions. We have 9 more minutes. We can take questions. So the last question that I have is from a startup. They are from our Noida warehouse. They're asking, do we need to travel for all the rounds? And if yes, then who will be bearing the travel expenses? Is it beared by the startup, or that would be reimbursed for finalists? How it gonna be?
It's not, you don't have to travel for all the rounds. As we said, we'll first shortlist and then communicate the topics, shortlisted folks. There is a video pitch, so which you could do it from your respective location. And the final round is where we expect folks to come to Bangalore, and it's going to be mostly in our office, which is Embassy Golf Links in Domlur in Bangalore, closer to the NASSCOM Bangalore warehouse. So that's one. So we expect the final teams to be present in Bangalore at our office on those 2 days or 1 day at max. Like the way I said, we are not going to be bearing the travel costs, unfortunately. So the respective teams have to work through the travel schedule and bear the costs.
Thanks, Anupama. I guess we have covered all the questions that I have. In case anybody has more questions, they can reach out to me directly. I have published my email ID on the webinars and in the social media posts as well. You can note it down, shubham@nasscom.in, shubham@nasscom, nasscom.in. Feel free to post your questions there. We will take it up, and we will be publishing this webinar to those people who are unfortunately not able to attend this. And thank you so much for all to all the attendees who have taken out time to join this webinar. And again, I would like to thank the Fidelity team, Anupama and Shyam, for the insightful webinar. It was really, really insightful, and it was very nice to have you guys. I hope all our startups and student teams who have participated in this webinar will get good learnings from this, and they can participate with more focus, more planning, and in a better way. And in case you guys have any queries, any questions, please feel free to write to us. We'll take it up, and we would like to see you guys participating in more numbers. And thanks all once again. Any closing note from Fidelity team, Shyam and Anupama, if you want to give, over to you.
Yeah, so first of all, we'd like to thank the NASSCOM team for helping organize the webinar, and like Shubham mentioned, everybody who took out time to attend this, and thank you for all the questions. So yeah, the call to action really is to start thinking and posting your ideas. Good luck, and we're also available for questions. So please feel free to route them through Shivam, if you have any. Yeah, with that, we'll give you back 4 minutes. Good luck and have a nice day.
Thanks, Shyam. We'll be concluding this webinar here. Thanks all of you once again for joining this. It was great to have you all. Thank you so much.